The NBA season is right around the corner, which means it's time to talk about those Atlanta Hawks. And specifically on this episode, I'm going to talk about a certain player that I believe holds the cards to how far the Atlanta Hawks will go this season. But before we get started on that, I want to tell you guys to hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share, and tell a friend, and tell a friend, and tell a friend to support my channel. That's right. The NBA season is right around the corner. Preseason is already started. And hey, man, I want to get into the Atlanta Hawks, man. And specifically, a player that I'm going to mention is Jalen Johnson. And Jalen Johnson, for those of y'all that, didn't pay attention, he was injured. He tore his labrum last season, but he's back. And based off of these first two preseason games for the Hawks, he looks healthy. Jalen Johnson looks healthy. He looks terrific. And that alone should excite Atlanta Hawk fans. Because in my eyes, this is huge. This is a huge development that we're seeing from Jalen Johnson, him being on the court. And not just him being on the court, but the way he's been playing in these two preseason games. And look, you always want to take preseason with a grain of salt. I understand it. You don't want to get too high or too low when it comes to preseason results. And even what you see on the court when it comes to preseason. But at the same time, you got to be encouraged with what you're seeing out of Jalen Johnson. And I say that because I believe the Atlanta Hawks this season will go as far as Jalen Johnson takes them. Yeah, absolutely. Like, the Atlanta Hawks this season will go as far as Jalen Johnson takes them. We can talk about Trae. We can talk about Porzingis. We can talk about Dyson Daniels, Risacher, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Onyeka, Luke Kennard, all of the nice additions. We can talk about Quinn Snyder, the coach. The Atlanta Hawks this season will go as far as Jalen Johnson takes them because he's the key. And look, with Jalen Johnson, I know there's this little rush amongst the NBA media and maybe even some Hawk fans that want to proclaim Jalen to be the best player on the team. And look, he could be in time. He could be this season. I'm still going to give the nod to Trae Young in that regard. But Jalen Johnson has the highest ceiling on this team. He's the guy that has the highest upside. He's the guy that if things hit with Jalen Johnson, this Atlanta Hawks team can go up another level. And when I say go up another level, I'm talking about they could win the Eastern Conference. Or who knows? Maybe they could win it all. If Jalen Johnson hits his peak, his ceiling. Because when you look at Jalen Johnson, this is a guy that's 6'9". He's 220 to 230 pounds. He's long. He's athletic. And this is a dude that can just do just about everything on a basketball floor. He can grab and go. He can rebound. He can make plays in transition. He can pass. He'll dunk on your head. His jump shot's developing. He can do it all. But the thing with Jalen Johnson, and it's been an issue for the past couple of years, is he's had trouble staying healthy. And look, I've attributed the health problems with Jalen Johnson to a little bit of bad luck. You look at the 2023-2024 season. He injured his wrist because Kyle Kuzma just pushed him when he was trying to go up for a dunk, and he fell on his wrist and he broke it. And then he had the ankle problems, which was, like I said, a little bit of bad luck. He wore an ankle brace, the next time. And you look at last season, he tore his labrum. He injured his shoulder. And so he's had a lot of unfortunate injuries. And in some ways you can't control that. But for me, like when I look at Jalen Johnson, like I said, man, this is a guy that can do everything on the floor. As a basketball player, he can, like I said, he can handle. He can he can dribble the ball coast to coast and make a play in transition. He can dunk in your face. He can finish at the rim. He can his jump shots developing. He can rebound. He can block shots. He can get steals. He gets deflections. He can do everything. And there's not many players in the league that has the complete overall skill set of a Jalen Johnson. And he's very important to what the Hawks want to accomplish this season. They need Jalen Johnson to be healthy. And not only that, they need Jalen Johnson to be the best complete peak version of himself. This is a guy that can still grow. Jalen Johnson is only 22 years old, right? And so this is a guy that actually I think he might be 23. I might maybe trying to remember 22 or 23. So he's still young, still in his early 20s. And like I said, this is a guy that can still get a lot better on the court. And I think for the Atlanta Hawks, they need him. They need him because he's a guy that just fills in a lot of gaps for this team. They need him to reach his ceiling. They need him to produce and ball out. And I think he can do it. You look at how Jalen Johnson played last season. This is a guy that before he got injured, he was averaging 19 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists. He shot over 50% from the field. And this was a guy that was starting to look like an all-star caliber player. And I see no reason why that can't continue moving forward this season, especially considering that you're putting him next to a guy like Kristaps Porzingis, who can stretch the court with his three-point shot, who can protect the rim, who can rebound, who can score in the post. Like a guy like Kristaps Porzingis is just going to make life easier for Jalen Johnson to do his thing when it comes to handling the ball, getting to the basket, rebounding, pushing the ball, making plays as a passer, scoring in the paint, And so the Porzingis factor, having Porzingis on the team and his presence should make life easier for Jalen Johnson, not just Jalen Johnson, but everyone else on the team. And you pairing him with Trae, which in my eyes, I think Trae and Jalen Johnson are a really good pairing. They're a really good pairing. And when you look at the chemistry that the two have when it comes to, operating in pick and roll, when Trae is trapped and he finds Jalen Johnson on a short roll, and he's able to make a bucket or make a pass or a lob to Porzingis or Nyeka. You see Jalen Johnson making plays in transition, pushing the ball. With Jalen Johnson's skill set, like he's like a point forward. And when you're 6'9", like Jalen Johnson is, and you can handle the ball, there's not many power forwards in the league that wants to guard him head up when he's just dribbling the ball the way Jalen Johnson can dribble the ball head of steam. Like he's just unique in that way. And so, like I said, man, he's just a unique talent. And you look at how he's been looking in preseason. I think the thing that's been most encouraging to me watching Jalen Johnson in preseason is he's playing with some force. You look at a game against the Houston Rockets. I think the first preseason game, he gets a block, and then he's dribbling on a break, and he has Amint Thompson guarding him, and he just pushes his left shoulder up to his chest, and he bullies him, and he scores at the rim with his left hand, finishing through contact, and he makes the layup and one. Like plays like that should get you excited about what Jalen Johnson is going to do this season. And if you look at the second preseason game against the Memphis Grizzlies, Jalen Johnson finishes with 20 points. He has 7 rebounds. But here's the kicker. Something that should excite Hawk fans for Jalen Johnson and what he did in that game. He got to the free throw line 6 times, and he was 6 for 6 from the free throw line. Just attacking the rim, getting to the basket, drawing fouls. This is what Jalen Johnson is capable of doing. Just playing with force, playing with some aggression. There was a play where he attacked off the dribble and he scored on a layup. There was another play where he was dribbling coast to coast in transition and he just goes right past the defender and he scores on a layup. I think it was like a left-handed layup that he did. Like, things like that are just dynamic plays that no one on this team can replicate. And this is what Jalen Johnson can do. This is what he's capable of. Like, when I'm looking at player comps for a guy like Jalen Johnson, like, I look at him, if you want to go old school, like, I look at Jalen Johnson like he's like a combination of Josh Smith and Boris Diaw. Like, Hawk fans, I know you guys remember Josh Smith and what he did as an Atlanta Hawk and how he was athletic and dynamic and the way he can block shots and dunk and pass and get to the basket. Imagine Josh Smith with like a Boris Diaw like basketball IQ. Imagine a Josh Smith who doesn't take bad jump shots and just plays within himself and plays within his strengths. This is what Jalen Johnson can do. And so we're talking about a guy that's just dynamic and versatile and skilled. And if you want to go modern, when you want to talk about player comps for a guy like Jalen Johnson, I mean, look at Jalen Johnson as like what Ben Simmons was supposed to be. Like, remember Ben Simmons earlier in his career when people looked at him as like, could he be the next LeBron? No, I didn't. Look, I was never in that camp of Ben Simmons being LeBron. No one is, but he was getting that hype earlier during his career, and then all of a sudden, the Atlanta Hawks series happened. The turning down the layup, and then all of a sudden he was never the same player. You look at Jalen Johnson. I think Jalen Johnson is like a realized should have been version of Ben Simmons to me. Like, you look at what Ben Simmons was supposed to be. I think Jalen Johnson is that. Like, I look at Jalen Johnson as like the realized version of Ben Simmons. Like what Ben Simmons was supposed to be as a point forward who can handle, who's dynamic, who can finish around the rim, who can pass and finish and play defense and shoot it a little bit. Like, what Ben Simmons was supposed to be is what Jalen Johnson is. And so imagine having that on your basketball team. And we all complain about Trae Young, never playing with an all-star, right? And when I defend Trae Young from the criticism, I always go to that point that Trae Young has never had a real all-star next to him. Like, we can go down to some of his teammates. We can go down to Clint Capella, DeAndre Hunter, John Collins, Bogey, DeJounte Murray. Like, all of those guys were good in their own right, but neither of those guys were real all-stars. And in the case of a guy like DeJounte Murray, he was an awful fit with Trae Young. Just a terrible fit. You're talking about a guy like Trae who needs the ball in his hands, who's a point guard, who also isn't a good defender. Like, he was a terrible fit. Like, I never looked at any of those guys. Even though some of those guys were good players, all of them had issues in their own right. In the case of DeJounte Murray, not being a good fit. With Clint Capella, he was awesome in 2021, but his game declined after that. Never the same player. Bogey, very good player, but, limited defensively, a pure shooter and also a guy who's dealt with some injuries. DeAndre Hunter, also a guy, had injuries for the most part. Has had knee tendonitis, and I think that kind of robbed him of his defensive potential that he showcased earlier in his career. He's also a guy that hasn't been consistent or impactful. Right? There's a reason why the Hawks moved on from DeAndre Hunter. John Collins, a guy that the Hawks, for most of his tenure, tried to move. Right? And so all of those guys were never the ideal pairing with Trae. Now you fast forward to a guy like Jalen Johnson. Jalen Johnson has that ability to be the star player that Trae Young has been missing. Jalen Johnson has that ability and talent and potential to be the star, the consistent all-star level player that Trae Young has never had. Like, he has that ability when you look at his physical gifts, his talent, his skill set. Jalen Johnson has the physical tools to be the all-star that we've been clamoring that Trae needs next to him. He has that ability. He has all the tools in the world. But he's got to stay healthy. He's got to be on the floor. He's also got to be reliable. And he's got to continue to add to his game. And based off of what we've seen in these preseason games, Jalen Johnson he's done that. He's added to his game. I think last week, I think I heard Jalen Johnson talked about how he spent the summer, working out with LeBron James, and that LeBron James has kind of helped him and molded him, and he gave them a few pointers and advice to help develop his game. And Jalen Johnson talked about how mentally he's in a different place compared to where he used to be. And that's a great thing. That's a great sign. That's a great sign if that's true, that Jalen Johnson mentally is in a really good place, and LeBron James has helped him out. And look, if you want to work out with somebody, I mean, there's no better person or player to work out with and get advice from than someone like LeBron James, who's a top 2 player of all time. And so I think it's a great sign that Jalen Johnson's has worked out with LeBron. He's gotten some advice from him, and I think it's something that obviously should benefit him moving forward. But look, man, as an Atlanta Hawks fan, like, I'm uber excited about the season, and I think, look, I don't want to spoil you guys, but I got a little bit of a hot take, concerning the Hawks. I guess I'll tease you with that on a later episode. But as excited as I am about the Atlanta Hawks, I'm very excited about Jalen Johnson and what he's going to do this season, because the Atlanta Hawks are going to go as far as this dude takes them. Like, we can talk about all the other players, but Jalen Johnson's the key. He is the key to this season. He is the key for this thing to work. We got to get the best version of Jalen Johnson this season. We got to have Jalen Johnson on the floor. We got to have him healthy. We got to have him effective, and we got to have him playing at the peak of his powers, for this team, for this Hawk team to get to where I think it can go, so, and I think the fact that he's looked the way that he's looked in these 2 preseason games, and that he's looked like himself. He's not tentative. He's aggressive. He's playing with force. He's aggressive defensively. He's making plays. He's making, he's finishing at the rim, all of that stuff, making great passes, finding his teammates on open shots and lobs and all of that. Jalen Johnson has done everything. And I think the fact that we're seeing that in this preseason up to this point is very encouraging. And I think it's something that should excite Hawk fans moving forward. But, hey, man, like I said, I'm very excited about Jalen Johnson. I think this dude has the potential to be a game changer for this team. Like, I really do. I really believe it, man. Along with the other guys that we have on the roster, we like I said, Dyson Daniels, Zaccharie, Risacher, Porzingis, Onyeka, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Luke Kennard, and obviously we Trae Young leading the way. Like, I'm excited about all of these guys for sure, man. I'm very excited about what the Atlanta Hawks are going to showcase us this season. But it starts with Jalen Johnson, man. It starts with Jalen Johnson. This team is going to go as far as Jalen Johnson takes them. And I think the fact that he's showcased what he's been doing on the floor in this preseason is a very encouraging sign. And I think it's something that, hey man, that should greatly excite Hawk fans. And hey man, I can't wait, man. I can't wait to see what Jalen Johnson is going to showcase us this season. As I said before, I think this team's going to go as far as Jalen Johnson takes them. And hey man, that's all I have. And hey man, shout out Jalen Johnson. I can't wait to see you. Can't wait to see you out there on the basketball court for the rest of this for the portion of the season. And hey man, let's see what you got, man. I can't wait.